You know, it's funny. You can completely dismantle a stranger's worldview in a comment section
Oh, yeah.
or, like, solve global politics in a group chat.
Right. We've all been there.
But then you finally lock your screen, and you are still just a person sitting in a quiet, completely unchanged room.
Yeah. Just sitting there in the dark.
Exactly. You just spent 2 hours being profoundly deep in a puddle that, well, doesn't actually go anywhere.
It really doesn't. And that cognitive dissonance is, I mean, it's basically the defining friction of our time
Oh, for sure.
because we have this unprecedented access to information,
Yeah.
right, and all these platforms to broadcast our ideals.
Yeah, the megaphone is always on.
But that massive influx of data is, it's rarely paired with the physical agency to actually act on it.
Which is so frustrating.
It is. We end up substituting the debate
Yeah.
for the action, and that just leaves us feeling exhausted, but, fundamentally stagnant.
And that tension is really the beating heart of today's deep dive.
Absolutely.
So today, we're looking at some excerpts from a really fascinating text called The Conscious River, an Intellectual and Spiritual Camp.
It's such a great read.
It really is. And our mission for you today is to explore how we can actually bridge that really intimidating gap between our virtual ideals and our physical lives.
Because it's a huge gap.
Right. We're going to look at how shifting our mindset from being like a stagnant pool of information into what the text calls a conscious river can totally change the way we operate in the real world.
Yeah, and the premise of the source material sets this up so perfectly.
It does.
We're basically following these three men who have been engaged in these intense, highly philosophical debates on social media.
Which usually just fade away, right?
Exactly. But instead of letting those digital connections just inevitably fade, they do something almost unheard of.
They actually meet up.
Right. They coordinate a real-world in-person retreat right at the turn of the new year.
Yeah, they gather at this modern holiday resort in a neighborhood called Gündüz Yüzü.
Which is an old Anatolian village.
Right, and the name actually translates to daytime face.
Oh, that's a beautiful detail.
Yeah, and their stated goal is to balance the virtual world with the real world, hold this intellectual and spiritual camp, and, record their notes to write a contemplative story.
It's quite the ambition.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because taking a relationship from a theoretical internet thread to a physical retreat that's a massive leap.
It's a huge risk.
Right. Most online debates end in, like, a block or a mute, not an international flight to a cabin.
Yeah, no kidding.
So who are the people actually trying to pull this off?
Well, rather than getting bogged down in, their specific biographies, it really helps to look at what these three men represent.
Okay, like archetypes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because they're really avatars for the different ways we process information today.
Got it.
So first you have the uncle. He's this 72-year-old retired teacher from Istanbul.
So he's the elder statesman.
Right. He represents the conscience of the group. He's very calm, very polite, and he doesn't just have an I've seen a lot attitude. He has an I've filtered a lot attitude.
Oh, wow. Which is a really important distinction.
Yeah, how so?
Well, seeing a lot just means you survive the passage of time.
Right.
But filtering a lot means you actively process the signal through all the noise.
Yes, exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Who's next?
Then there's the nephew. He's a 32-year-old entrepreneur from Bursa.
Okay, so a lot younger.
Much younger. And he represents the sort of anxious pulse of the current age. He wants to understand, and he desperately wants to be understood.
So he's the hustle, the momentum.
Exactly, the constant search for the next thing. And then rounding them out is Roger.
And Roger's from the U.S., right?
Yeah, Wayne, New Jersey. He's 42, and he brings this cross-cultural academic perspective. He thinks a lot about digital ethics, algorithms, echo chambers.
So he's bringing the structure, universal reason and ethics.
You nailed it. And what's fascinating here is how perfectly balanced this trio is.
They really cover all the bases.
They do. You have the distilled wisdom of age, the urgent momentum of youth, and the analytical structure of modern academia.
Having the guy who lived before the internet, the guy trying to build the future on it, and the guy studying how it's paralyzing us all in the same room, it's a great setup.
It's the perfect psychological ecosystem.
That, their transition from the digital world to this quiet retreat, it feels a bit like closing out 50 chaotic browser tabs when your computer's fan is just screaming.
Oh, that sound.
Yeah. And finally opening one single blank offline document.
That's a really good analogy.
But here's my question. Closing the laptop doesn't automatically write the document.
Right.
It's simply logging off enough to find peace? Or do they actually have to do something to bridge that gap between their online ideals and real life?
Well, you're hitting on the exact wall they run into just a few days into this retreat.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on the morning of their third day, the quiet of the physical world really forces them to confront that exact difference.
The difference between just thinking and doing.
Exactly. And the text illustrates this so beautifully in chapter 11.
Oh, right, with the lake. So the nephew looks out of his cabin window and he sees these thin streams flowing down the mountain to a lake.
Yeah. And earlier in the week, they just looked like normal water paths to him.
But now they look like veins feeding a living body.
Yes.
So he steps outside, and the uncle is already there, leaning on his cane. And he's listening to the flow of the stream at its source, as if, I love this description, as if he's listening to a sentence forming.
It's so poetic. And the uncle turns to him and explains that the lake represents depth, but the river represents that depth actually entering life.
Wow. Depth entering life.
Yeah, that's the pivot point of their entire philosophy. They realize that depth without movement is meaningless.
It's just a puddle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They conclude that activity is the visible sign of existence.
The visible sign of existence.
Right. The uncle argues that being is delight and non-being is pain.
And Roger jumps in there too, right? With his academic lens.
He does. Roger notes that the active person tastes the delight of existence, whereas stagnation acts like a blocked river.
A blocked river. And this is where they come up with that definition of stress, right?
Yes. They define stress as the smell of water left unmoving.
The smell of water left unmoving. That is just such a striking image. But I want to push on the mechanics of that for a second.
Sure.
Why does a lack of physical movement create such an intense feeling of stress? I mean, on paper, sitting still sounds relaxing, not stressful.
That's a really good point. It really comes down to cognitive dissonance and something in psychology known as the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect. Remind me what that is.
It's basically how your brain is wired to remember and fixate on uncompleted tasks.
Ah, right. The open loops.
Exactly. When you engage in endless digital debates or absorb, thousands of news headlines without doing anything about them, your brain registers all of those as open, unresolved loops.
Oh, wow. So you're just hoarding all this unresolved crisis.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have high access to crisis, but low physical agency to resolve it. And that unresolved mental energy has nowhere to go.
So it literally manifests in the body as chronic stress.
Precisely. You become that stagnant pool, accumulating everything but flowing nowhere.
That is wild. So the stress is literally the internal pressure of all that unacted upon information just rotting inside you.
In a sense, yeah. The information needs an outlet.
That makes the nephew's reaction really interesting to me, because while they're looking at this stream, the nephew points to these small leaves floating on the surface.
Yeah, the ones getting caught on stones.
Right. Some get caught, others just drift aimlessly. And he admits, sometimes I feel like one of those leaves. Not sinking, but not truly flowing either.
It's a very vulnerable moment.
It is, and I have to say, looking at our modern burnout culture where we're constantly told to optimize every single second of our lives, I deeply relate to the nephew here.
I think a lot of people would.
Right. Sometimes just floating and letting the current take you seems like a necessary survival mechanism. So, wait. Is being the leaf really a failure? Is going with the flow sometimes necessary?
I struggle with that part of the text too, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because the uncle's philosophy demands an immense amount of energy. But the uncle would argue that the relief you feel when you're floating like a leaf is actually a dangerous illusion.
An illusion. How so?
Because when you float, you surrender your direction entirely to external forces. You surrender to the algorithm, to the news cycle, to the demands of your workplace. You aren't resting, you're just abdicating control.
Oh, wow. That hits hard. So if being the leaf means surrendering to the environment, true consciousness must require actively fighting that current.
In a way, yes.
But how does the text differentiate between just moving and moving consciously? Because, I know plenty of people who are incredibly busy, practically drowning in activity, but they are totally unconscious in how they live.
That's exactly the distinction Roger brings up. Movement alone isn't the goal. A river isn't just a pool collecting what falls into it. It knows where it flows.
Okay.
So the uncle breaks consciousness down into a specific progression.
What are the stages?
First is awareness. You have to wake up and actually recognize the water you're in, the systems you're a part of.
Like realizing you're doom scrolling.
Exactly. Second is meaning, understanding why your presence in that water matters.
Right.
And the final critical stage is deliberate choice. The defining quote they land on here is, "Water flows by gravity. The human being flows by intention."
The human being flows by intention.
Yeah,
So what does this all mean? It basically means that nature takes the path of least resistance, but human consciousness actually requires friction.
it does.
It requires choosing your route rather than just falling down the mountain.
And that realization creates a severe mandate for these three men.
Oh, I'll bet.
Because if intention is what makes us human, and activity is the proof of our existence, they can't just justify sitting around a picturesque cabin looking at a stream all day.
Right. The nephew feels this massive internal shift. He literally thinks to himself, today I must move, not only reflect, but act.
He's ready to do something.
Exactly. So Roger suggests they pivot. He says they should go down to the local village and do something with the children there.
To remind those kids that they too are conscious rivers.
Yeah, and the uncle loves this idea. He says this beautiful thing, that life is like a letter and children are its fresh pages.
Oh, I love that line.
It's so good. He says to speak to them is to pour water into the future.
Such a great metaphor.
It is, but okay, I have to point out the risk here.
What's the risk?
It's really easy to wax philosophical among highly educated adults in a cabin.
Sure.
But taking these abstract, high-level concepts about gravity versus intention and the Zeigarnik effect and trying to explain them to young kids, that is incredibly difficult.
That's a huge challenge.
So how do they actually translate this deep philosophy into something an 8-year-old can grasp without losing that profound meaning?
Well, it's the ultimate stress test for any intellectual framework.
Yeah.
Right? If your philosophy only works in a university seminar, it's not a functional philosophy.
Exactly. It's just hot air.
Right. So they head down to the neighborhood schoolyard around noon. And the setting brings everything down to earth instantly.
Yeah, it's this small schoolyard. The walls are covered in children's drawings, right? Like suns and trees.
Yes, and there's this large blue circle painted on one wall that looks just like the lake they were philosophizing about earlier.
It's almost cinematic. So they gather a group of these curious kids, and the uncle doesn't stand up and deliver a lecture.
No, he gets right down to eye level.
Right, and he starts with this massive, open-ended question. What is a human being?
And the little girl answers, "A being who can think."
Which is pretty smart for a kid.
It is. And the uncle validates that, but he guides her further. He asks if a human can think together with others.
And another kid says, with friends.
Exactly. And that's when the uncle lands his core concept. He tells them a human being is an individual who thinks, but also a river that thinks together.
A river that thinks together. He takes his cane, and he actually draws a small circle in the dirt to represent a lake.
Grounding it visually for them.
Yeah. And he tells the kids that each of them is a stream flowing toward that lake. Whenever they do something good, they're adding clean water to their neighborhood's lake.
It's brilliant. He immediately grounds this abstract concept of community into a visual of cause and effect. He's showing them their agency.
But then the nephew presses the practical side.
Right, he asks the kids what it actually means to be good.
And the kids give the expected answers, right? Like not hurting anyone, helping people.
Yeah, standard stuff. But then the uncle introduces this profound psychological reframe.
This part blew my mind.
He tells them that goodness, truth, and beauty are their original nature, and that any wrongdoing or ugliness they commit are just shadows that come later.
Wow. That feels entirely different from how we usually teach morality.
Yeah, normally it's based on guilt.
Right. Or the idea that you have to earn your goodness.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture of developmental psychology, what the uncle is doing is separating the child's identity from their behavior.
Which is crucial.
It is. He establishes the rule that you never tell a child you are bad. You only say, what you did was not good.
Because it preserves their core identity as a source of clean water.
Right. If a child believes their core is corrupt, they'll act corruptly.
That makes total sense.
But if they believe their core is good, and their bad actions are just passing shadows, they retain the capacity to correct their course. Deep down, there is always a love for goodness. A child is always worthy of love.
But kids are remarkably perceptive, right?
Oh, yeah. They always find the loopholes.
Because they instantly spot the flaw in this idealized model. This shy boy raises his hand and asks basically the hardest question possible.
He asks, if we make a mistake, will God forgive us?
Right, because if every action pours water into the lake, what happens when you pour toxic water? Is the lake ruined forever?
Such a heavy question for a kid, But the uncle handles this with incredible care.
He does.
He softly explains that forgiveness is like a lake making space for new water.
Making space for new water.
Yes, the goal isn't to normalize mistakes or pretend they don't happen. The goal is to learn and find direction again, to ensure a mistake doesn't paralyze your flow.
And then he draws that timeline in the dirt, right?
Yes, this beautiful metaphor. He compares an entire human life to a single day.
Okay, break that down for us.
So birth is morning, youth is noon, old age is the evening redness, and death is the sunset.
And night.
Night is forgetfulness. But he tells the boy, the Lord forgets nothing.
Wow. It gives them this sense of urgency, but without dread. You have daylight, so use it to flow in the right direction.
Exactly.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Oh, with a nephew.
Yes, because talking to the kids is great, it's inspiring, but the nephew's whole goal was to act.
Right, he wanted a mechanism, not just a metaphor.
Exactly. So he stays forward, and he hands a little girl a small notebook. And he calls it a conscious river journal.
This is the real bridge between theory and practice.
Yeah. And he gives them 3 very specific prompts to write about every single day.
And notice how these prompts are structured to force an external focus, pulling the mind away from internal rumination.
Yeah, the prompts are 1, whom did I make happy today?
Excellent.
2, whom did I avoid hurting? And 3, to which goodness did I become water?
The psychology behind those questions is just brilliant.
It really is.
Because they demand accountability for daily physical action. They don't ask, how did you feel today?
Right, which can trap you in that stagnant puddle of your own emotions.
Exactly. They ask, what did you affect in the real world?
It trains the brain to seek out opportunities for intentional flow.
It shifts the child from being the leaf carried by the current to the river directing its own path.
And the entire interaction wraps up with this really poignant collision of their digital lives and their physical reality.
The girl with the notebook.
Yeah, the little girl asks if they will come back next year, and Roger smiles and he introduces them as neighbors from the virtual village.
I love that phrase.
It's sweet. And he mentions that maybe one day they can share their journal pages on a screen.
But he gives them one crucial rule.
Yes. He
Yeah.
immediately anchors it with this non-negotiable rule. First real life, then the screen.
And there it is, the ultimate solution to the digital age paradox we started with.
First real life, then the screen.
It doesn't treat the digital world as inherently evil or, something to be completely abandoned.
Right. It's not anti-technology.
Not at all. It just demands the proper sequence. The screen should be a reflection of the lake. It cannot be the water itself.
That is so true.
Because when we reverse that order, when we try to generate our depth entirely on a screen, we end up paralyzed.
It's an incredibly powerful framework. I mean, we've tracked these 3 men from the theoretical echo chambers we're all so familiar with, all the way to a dusty schoolyard in Anatolia.
It's quite the journey.
It is. And we watch them realize that human beings aren't designed to be stagnant pools, passively absorbing this endless stream of digital information and global crises.
We are built for that.
We're meant to be conscious rivers. We flow by intention, not by the gravity of the algorithms.
Yeah.
And by making deliberate physical choices in our immediate surroundings, we can actually pour clean water into the future.
And, this raises an important question for all of us navigating this hyper-connected world.
Yeah.
Think back to that visceral definition of stress the uncle provided. The smell of water left unmoving.
Yeah.
That cognitive dissonance we feel when we're endlessly scrolling, debating, and absorbing without acting. It requires a hard audit of your own habits. You have to ask yourself, where have your water stagnated? Where are you hoarding knowledge, opinions, or anxieties without ever letting them flow into tangible action in your physical community?
That is the real challenge to take away from this. Moving the profound ideas out of the group chat and actually bringing them into your own neighborhood.
Absolutely.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to revisit the uncle's metaphor about the timeline of life.
The single day.
Yes. He described an entire human life as just a single day, morning, noon, evening, and sunset. So take a second right now, wherever you're listening, to ask yourself, what time of day is it for you right now?
Such a powerful question.
Are you in the bright morning of your youth, the high noon of your career, or the evening of your wisdom? And really, no matter what time the clock says, before your sun sets today, to which goodness will you become water?